All right, folks, this
Infrastructure and municipalities.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and it's good to be here talking about housing. And the Conservatives talk a really good game. They, during question period, during the last 15 minutes, passionate discussion of housing. But, Mr. Speaker, when the rubber meets the road, they're nowhere to be found.
I really find it ironic that the MP's talking about the Conservatives not being there when he's basically sitting in an empty house of Liberals, where I think every Conservative is there at work on Monday morning. Well, he stands in an echo chamber room because there's no one on his side. He goes on for 10 minutes, but I'll shorten it up for you, and we'll get to Pierre at the end. So hold tight and stay excited. This is a real good one. He just demolishes them in the end.
The leader of the opposition just glossed over his loss of 800,000 units of housing. And when someone questioned him on it, he had the gall just to answer with insults. But the reality is there was no action on housing. And the decades previous, we find ourselves in a crisis that is decades in the making, but we're ready, we're up to the task. There's something that the leader said that I do want to correct. He said that housing starts were down. Housing starts are actually up 4%, 20% in Toronto, 98% in the city of Montreal. This is fundamentally an important issue for all Canadians. And what does the leader of the opposition want to do? He wants to go to war with municipalities.
Well, once again, the Liberal NDP, he's full of basically, I'll show you the statistics. The amount of homes being built is down. Permit cost is up. But what did he do? He cherry-picked 2 cities and said, as if that's the whole country. Look at this.
Here's Stats Canada that says homes are down. The amount of homes being built is down by like 60,000 this year. The idea that you can bring in 1 million people and not do anything of it, and then Trudeau says it's not actually a federal carriage, it's just kind of lying. And I don't know about you, I'm kind of tired of politicians stretching and doing the truth. Admit you've created a problem and how you're going to fix it. But that ain't happening. Check out this shovel of
come up here and pound your desk, Mr. Speaker, and say we're going to take away infrastructure money from municipalities. But that doesn't work. We need to work with municipalities. We need to focus on infrastructure because infrastructure is what's going to be housing built. You can't just take an empty field and plop down houses on it. The aliens, the leader of the opposition, talks about taking away housing, aren't going to deliver them on lands, on empty fields. There needs to be sewage. There needs to be water. There needs to be electricity. There needs to be all the services that are required.
By contrast, the current housing minister has come up with a program that works very simple. He calls up the mayor. He says, everyone knows housing is hell after 8 years of our government. Can I come to town and take credit for homes you were already going to build, and I'll write you a big check if you do it? So he shows up, the city says, yeah, there was already a subdivision going in over there. Let's give the minister credit for that, and in exchange he'll stroke a big check for $40 million with which we can build more bureaucracy. And then the bureaucrats will be happy, the politicians will be happy, and everyone else will be miserable. And so that's what he's been doing. We know that this is not leading to more housing construction because housing starts this year are down 9%. So yes, he can show up and say, oh, look at these 24,000 homes that were already going to be built. But the overall housing starts, the number of shovels put into ground, down 9%. 2 years after this so-called housing accelerator was created, not a single solitary new house has been completed. A $4 billion housing program that doesn't
but
build
they'd rather
housing.
have a big speech, puff up their chests, pound their desks, and ignore the reality of actually getting housing built. It's about rolling up our sleeves. It's about getting
a $4 billion housing program that doesn't build housing.
Really shocking that they want to take steps backwards on this file. I look to cities across the country, and I've met with mayors, municipal officials. I've met with municipal officials in my own community, and there are infrastructure challenges. In the city of St. Catharines, there are sewer upgrades that are required to get more housing built. You can't just build you can approve a permit, Mr. Speaker, for a 20-story building, but if there isn't the sewer capacity, you can't build it.
Here's another point that the Liberals seem, they have like a $40 or $50 billion slush fund that they've been putting into infrastructure bank that only does infrastructure for wealthy, profitable companies, it seems. But infrastructure for sewers and stuff like that, no.
Mr. Speaker, that they can actually do is help expedite, stall, delay, not work with the government. And they, again, talk a good game, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure there will be many more passionate speeches about how the Conservatives care. But when it comes to tangible items that they can do, like voting for the affordability legislation before this Parliament, they're nowhere to be found. Silent on the issue. Silence on any effort to actually approve homes. And I get that their nature is wanting to get into a fight, wanting to yell and scream, hurl insults, come up with slogans. I think their environmental plan really is based on recycling slogans. But slogans don't get anything built, Mr. Speaker. And unfortunately, that's where the Conservatives are. We're ready to stand up and work with municipal and provincial partners. We're going to get housing.
A $4 billion housing program that doesn't build housing. My plan creates a strict mathematical formula that pays for results. Second principle, we're going to require every federally funded transit station be surrounded by housing so that you can live right next to the bus or train. Countless stations that I've been to right across this country are not, they don't have housing. In fact, in Winnipeg, the gatekeepers there actually stepped in to block 2,000 new homes right next to a transit station that was built for those homes. They had to get slapped down in the courts, and what did the Liberals do? They gave more money to the incompetent politicians at Winnipeg City Hall to block housing for the people who need it. Well, I'm going to put all the federal funds for transit stations into a trust, and the city will not get the money for the transit station until there are apartments occupied all around the station. And that way, they will have to hurry up and approve the housing if they want to get the money. We will again pay for results. Next, this bill will require that the federal Minister of Public Works do a full inventory and come to this House within months to announce all all of the buildings that will be sold in order to build housing. The Prime Minister promised this 8 years ago. And in 8 years, with all the 37,000 federal buildings and 6.2 million square meters of office space, and the thousands of acres, how many homes has he managed to build on federal land and in federal buildings? How many? I asked him. Don't worry, he didn't know either. 13. Not 13,000, not 1,300, 13. My bill will make it mandatory by law that the minister come here with a plan to sell off 15% of all federal buildings, thousands of acres of federal land, so that we can build on that land that's being used for nothing. And federal bureaucrats, on the fourth principle, are going to have to get their act together as well. I was speaking with a builder who builds beautiful, environmentally friendly homes and apartments in Atlantic Canada. He's in the process of building a carbon neutral home right now. It'll be the greenest apartment complex in the world. He had to wait 2 years for CMHC to approve the financing on that home. The benchmark is supposed to be 60 days. So here's how life is going to work around here when I'm Prime Minister. And in this bill, the CMHC bureaucrats will have to hit the 60-day target within 6 months. If they don't, I'm cutting their pay in half.
I just like to say this.
And if they don't
Imagine
do
a
it in a year, I'm
plumber
firing the entire
that
executive.
says, oh, I'll show up in 6 months or 7 years. And that's what these permits are happening in Canada. And we need to treat the bureaucrats the way that you would expect a tradesman to act, or a trades company. Here he continues on.
It's right in the bill. That's life. You're a barber, you don't cut hair well, you get fired. If you're a mechanic and the engine block falls out, you get fired. In the real world, when people don't do their job, they don't get bonuses. That's how life works under this Prime Minister for the senior six-figure bureaucracy. This bill puts an end for that. We're going to pay for results, not for bureaucracy and the privilege of incompetent bureaucrats who make life miserable and costly for everyone else. Mr. Speaker, the Building Homes Not Bureaucracy Act is common sense. The common sense of the common people united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the honourable member for his speech. And I think he left out of his speech that under his watch as the so-called housing minister, 800,000 fewer units of affordable housing, Mr. Speaker. But my question for him is, why go to war with mayors over infrastructure? Infrastructure is the key to getting more houses built. Why would he cut that? Inevitably, he'll see fewer homes getting built.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This will have to be a case for unsolved mysteries. He claims that when I was minister, there were 800,000 homes that went missing. Like, what happened to them? The aliens from outer space came and just plucked these homes, and they went up. And when we go around, what's remained? Are the basements still there? Like, where did they go? These guys are unbelievable. It sounds like he's having an LSD flashback or something, Mr. Speaker. Let's talk about when I was housing minister. Rent cost half as much, cost $950 to rent the average one bedroom. Now it's just about $2,000. The average mortgage payment on a newly purchased average home was $1,400. Now it's $3,500, an increase of 150%. And the average down payment was a very modest $20,000. That was my record. And we're not proposing to cut infrastructure money. We're proposing to link in dollars for cities to the number of homes that our bureaucrats and mayors allow to be completed. It is an incentive. Those that build more homes will get more money. That's the real world. That's common sense. Let's bring it home.